The transmission arrived like an unwelcome storm, flooding every screen on Earth with its icy message. It was not a request, nor a diplomatic plea. It was a decree. The Galactic Alliance, a coalition of species older and more advanced than humanity could comprehend, had spoken. The message was clear, and it was not just a warning. It was a threat. Humanity has exceeded the boundaries of the Sol system. Cease your expansion or face the consequences. The words rang out in every language, projected across every display, from the gleaming towers of New York to the humble quarters of Earth's most remote colonies. The tone was dispassionate, almost clinical, but there was a chilling finality behind the message. They were not here to negotiate. President Alyssa Tenner sat frozen in the command room, her hands gripping the edges of the desk as the transmission played again, and again, and again. She had expected a conflict, but not like this. The message was not delivered with malice. It was delivered with an eerie calm, as though the Alliance had already calculated humanity's inevitable downfall. They had been watching. The room was thick with silence as the message ended. Her advisors, gathered in a circle around her, exchanged glances, waiting for her to speak. "So, we've been noticed," she finally said, her voice steady but carrying a weight none of them could ignore. "And now they want us to stop, to crawl back into the shadows of our own system." A final caution. The advisors shifted uncomfortably. The tension was palpable. "Do we comply?" asked General Dylan Jansen, commander of Earth's United Defense Forces. His voice was gruff, tempered with years of experience in both politics and combat, but his eyes betrayed the uncertainty all of them felt. Alyssa turned to the screen again, where the final words of the transmission lingered. "Failure to comply will result in extinction. You have been warned." The phrase hung there, sharp and unforgiving. She exhaled, standing and walking toward the massive window that looked out over Earth's capital. The sun was just beginning to set, casting long shadows over the sprawling city. The silence in the room stretched out, broken only by the distant hum of the city's lights flickering to life. There were millions of people waiting for answers, but this wasn't just about them. This was about their future. "We don't bow to threats," she said finally, her voice rising with quiet intensity. "We never have. This is not the way we do things." "But, Madam President," said Director Nora Kim, the head of Earth's Space Exploration Agency, her tone cautious, "we have no idea what we're up against. The Alliance, these civilizations, they're decades, centuries ahead of us. We could be playing right into their hands." "I know," Alyssa replied, turning to face her, "and that's what terrifies them." The truth settled over them like a shadow. The Alliance feared humanity. It wasn't just the speed of their technological advances or their raw ambition. It was something deeper. Humanity's unpredictability, their aggression, their refusal to stay in line. Those were the things that the Alliance couldn't account for. They had seen civilizations grow complacent. Humanity was different. Humanity was a wild card. "Prepare the fleet," Alyssa said, turning back to face the room. Her decision was made. "We will not be silenced." Captain Marcus Vale stood on the bridge of the Harbinger, watching the stars stretch out before him. The massive warship had been outfitted for one purpose: to find the missing scout ship Artemis, the first human vessel to venture into the Proxima Centauri system. Its disappearance had shaken Earth's confidence, but Vale was used to uncertainty. What bothered him most wasn't the fact that the Artemis had vanished. It was the why. The mission briefing had been sparse, offering little more than the bare minimum. A routine exploratory mission that had gone dark. What was missing from the report, however, was the reason why Earth's best had been sent to investigate the heart of the mysterious warning from the Galactic Alliance. The more Vale thought about it, the more it gnawed at him. The Alliance didn't seem like the type to leave things to chance, and humanity had just stepped into their territory. The truth, as always, would be found in the gaps between official statements. "Captain, we're entering the Proxima system." Lieutenant Ilara Moan's voice crackled from the comms. No sign of the Artemis yet. Scanners are coming online. Vale nodded, his fingers lightly tapping on the armrest of his seat. Keep your eyes open, Lieutenant. They might be expecting us. The Harbinger sliced through the inky blackness, its advanced stealth systems cloaking the ship from prying eyes. Vale had been given the orders to remain as discreet as possible, but that didn't mean he trusted the Alliance. If they were monitoring this sector, they knew exactly who was coming. The question was whether they would let them find the truth. Captain, a voice interrupted his thoughts. It was Lieutenant Commander Hassan, the Harbinger's chief engineer. I'm picking up something strange. Subspace distortions in the vicinity of Proxima. Could be related to the Artemis. Vale's brow furrowed. Distortions in subspace could mean almost anything. But one thing was clear. Someone didn't want them here. Can you get a fix on the Artemis? He asked, his voice tight with anticipation. Hassan worked the console, his fingers flying over the interface. I'm getting a signal. It's faint, but it's coming from a nearby asteroid belt. It's damaged, Captain, heavily damaged. There's no way they could have survived a strike like this. Vale's stomach churned. He had feared this. He had hoped for something else, anything else. But what they were about to find was likely far worse than just the wreckage of a lost ship. Set course for the asteroid belt, Vale ordered, his voice cold with determination. Prepare for possible engagement. I don't think we're the only ones here. The Harbinger moved into the belt, its sensors searching the debris for any sign of the Artemis. As they drifted past rocky outcroppings and shattered space debris, something caught Vale's eye. Half of the Artemis was floating, or rather, shredded. What in the hell happened to it? Moan whispered, eyes wide as the grotesque remains of the Artemis loomed on the view screen. The ship had been torn apart as though by a surgical precision. The hull was still recognizable, but there were no signs of life. No escape pods had launched. No distress signal. It was almost as if the ship had been dissected. Bring us in closer, Vale said, the words slipping from his lips as if they were inevitable. There was no going back now. As the ship drew near, the faintest shimmer of a signal caught Vale's attention. A distress signal, a final plea, a simple, coded message. They are watching. They know. A cold shiver ran down Vale's spine. Cliffhanger. Before he could respond, a flash of light filled the view screen. A swarm of alien drones materialized from the debris, their glowing energy weapons locking onto the Harbinger in an instant. They were here. And they were not alone. The Harbinger shook violently as the alien drones fired, their energy beams slicing through space with brutal accuracy. Captain Marcus Vale's heart raced, but his mind remained as cold and precise as the weapon systems powering the ship. He slammed his palm down on the tactical console. Evasive maneuvers. Get us out of here. Vale barked, his voice cutting through the chaos. The ship's thrusters flared to life, lurching forward with a sudden burst of speed, as Lieutenant Moan's hands flew over the controls. The drones pursued relentlessly, their sleek forms darting in and out of the asteroid field with unnatural agility. Vale could see their energy cannons charging for another blast, the air crackling with tension. We can't outrun them in this field, Captain. Moan yelled, her voice tight with panic. Then we fight, Vale said, voice steady as he activated the weapon systems. Target the lead drone. We need to take one down, or we're done for. His crew moved with practiced precision. Hassan, the ship's chief engineer, worked frantically to reinforce the shields, while Moan worked the weapon systems. The ship rocked as a beam from the drone scraped along the hull, sending a shockwave through the bridge. Shields at 70% and dropping fast, Hassan reported. Vale clenched his fists. Return fire, Lieutenant. Now. A barrage of plasma rounds shot out from the Harbinger's cannons, slamming into the lead drone. It staggered, its glowing energy shield flickering before it disintegrated in a flash of light. The drones, however, were far from helpless. They regrouped quickly, their tactics synchronized in a way that felt practiced, like they had done this before. Vale's instincts screamed at him to retreat, but the ship's aft scanners were showing something far worse. "We've got company, Captain," Moan said, her voice barely audible as she processed the data. More ships, 3 more drones emerging from the edge of the belt. Vale's gaze hardened. The swarm was growing. They were outnumbered, and their shields wouldn't hold much longer. They had to finish this quickly. "We need to end this now," Vale said, his voice laced with cold determination. "Hassan, get those aft shields back online. Moan, bring us around and fire at will. I'll take care of the rest." As the crew sprang into action, Vale's mind raced. These drones weren't random. This was no typical scouting party. The Alliance had sent them here, but why? Why send such an overwhelming force against a single human vessel? They must have known the Artemis would have been a small target, barely a blip on their radar. Something was off, and Vale needed answers. Fast. "Captain," Moan called, snapping him out of his thoughts. "Incoming transmission. Coded. From the Alliance." Vale's brows furrowed. This wasn't just an attack anymore. They were being watched. "Patch it through," he ordered. The screen flickered, and an image of a stern-looking alien appeared. A creature with a dark exoskeleton, its eyes glowing a deep red. It was one of the higher-ranking officials of the Galactic Alliance. But Vale didn't feel fear. He felt anger. "Captain Vale," the alien's voice was cold, almost bored. "You are trespassing in restricted space. You will cease your aggression or face total annihilation." Vale gritted his teeth, his grip tightening on the armrest. "I'm not here to negotiate. What happened to the Artemis?" The alien paused, its red eyes narrowing. "The Artemis violated orders. It was dismantled for your protection." Vale's pulse quickened. "Dismantled? You are far more dangerous than you realize, Captain," the alien replied, its voice now tinged with something. "Fear. We will not allow you to continue." Before Vale could respond, the transmission was cut, and the drones closed in for another assault. Cliffhanger. Just as Vale readied the ship for another round, the sensors picked up something even more horrifying. The edge of the asteroid field was glowing. A massive object was emerging from behind the rocks, far larger than any ship he had ever seen. The enemy wasn't just trying to stop them. They were preparing for something much worse. And it was coming straight for them. The massive object emerging from behind the asteroid field was unlike anything Vale had seen before. It was a warship, but its design was unlike the sleek, polished ships of the Galactic Alliance. This vessel was enormous, a sprawling, jagged construct of blackened metal and alien alloys, its surface covered in what appeared to be relics of a bygone age. Cracked plates, ancient symbols, and strange energy conduits pulsing with unnatural light. It was like a dark, living thing, an apex predator, slowly creeping out of its lair. The Harbinger was still engaged with the swarm of drones, and the shields were already at 40%. Every moment brought them closer to being overwhelmed. They couldn't outrun the drones forever. And this new vessel, this was a new level of threat. "Captain," Lieutenant Moan called, her voice laced with tension. "That ship, it's charging something. Something huge." Vale's mind raced. "How much time do we have?" "Less than a minute," Moan replied. Vale turned to Hassan. "How's our weapon power holding up?" The engineer glanced at his console, his expression grim. "We're barely keeping our energy systems online. If that ship fires, we won't have a chance." Vale's eyes burned with cold fury. He knew they were outmatched. But he also knew one thing. Humanity never surrendered without a fight. "Lieutenant Moan," Vale ordered, his voice like steel, "use our remaining thrusters to push us into the asteroid belt. If we can get close enough, we can use the rocks for cover. That ship won't be able to lock onto us in this mess." Moan nodded, fingers moving with practiced speed across the controls. The Harbinger lurched forward, darting among the asteroids with a speed that seemed to defy logic, but Vale could feel the ship straining under the pressure. Every maneuver risked throwing them off course and exposing them to the drone's deadly fire. The alien warship loomed ever closer, its weapon system now fully charged. Vale could hear the faint hum of its energy weapon building, an ominous signal that the end was near. "All drones have regrouped, Captain," Moan shouted. "They're locking onto us. Now." Just as the drones launched their next wave of fire, Vale's orders rang out, sharp and decisive. "Fire at will. Target the drones first. Focus on the lead." The Harbinger's cannons fired in rapid succession, beams of energy streaking out to hit the drones in a brutal barrage. The first few exploded in flashes of light, but there were too many. The drones swarmed, their attacks precise, their patterns almost strategic. They were adapting faster than anything humanity had faced before. But there was no time to dwell on tactics. The alien warship's massive weapon fired, its beams slicing through the asteroid field with ease. The blast tore through an entire cluster of rocks, sending debris flying in all directions. The force of the explosion rocked the Harbinger, throwing Vale to the ground. The ship's lights flickered, and for a moment, everything went silent. "Status," Vale shouted, crawling back to his feet. "Shields down to 20%, Hassan called out, his voice strained. "Hull integrity is compromised. We're losing power. Systems are failing." "Brace for impact," Vale said, gripping the railing in front of him. "Moan, get us to the edge of the field. The debris will cover us, at least for a few minutes." But before Moan could respond, a sharp tone cut through the chaos. The ship's sensors flared. A new reading appeared on the screen. Another ship, this one massive and unlike the other. Its outline was faint, but it was there, a human signature. "What is that?" Moan asked, her voice tinged with disbelief. Vale's heart skipped a beat. A human ship. In the middle of this, who would dare approach? The screen cleared, revealing the familiar markings of the Terran Concorde. A ship. Asterisk, asterisk, the Manticore. Asterisk, asterisk, a battleship long thought lost in deep space. The message that followed was clear, chilling. "This is Captain Reis of the Manticore. Stand down, Captain Vale. We've been tracking you. We know the enemy. We know what's coming." The ship was not just arriving for a rescue. It was a warning. Cliffhanger. Vale stared at the transmission, his mind reeling. The Manticore was supposed to have been lost, and now it was here, at the heart of the battle. What could this mysterious crew know about the enemy? And what had they been tracking? Vale stared at the flickering screen, trying to process what he was seeing. The Manticore, a ship once thought lost in the depths of uncharted space, was here. And it wasn't just here by accident. It had been tracking them. The thought sent a chill through Vale. He had been fighting to survive, but this new arrival, it changed everything. Captain Reis. Vale muttered under his breath. The name echoed in his mind, memories of a distant war he had only heard about in whispered rumors. The Manticore had disappeared years ago, presumed destroyed in a battle with a species even more terrifying than the Galactic Alliance. If Reis was here, then they were facing something far bigger than just the Alliance. The comms crackled again, and this time the voice that came through was filled with grim resolve. "Captain Vale, I know you can hear me," came the voice of Captain Reis, rough with years of disuse. "You're in the thick of it now, aren't you? We've been monitoring the situation. The drones you're facing aren't just scouts. They're the vanguard of something far worse. And we've seen this before." Vale's mind raced. He'd never met Reis, but he knew the stories. The Manticore had been involved in the last galactic conflict, a war humanity had barely survived. It had been lost, the entire fleet crushed under the weight of an enemy known only as the Eternals. "The Eternals," Vale said, more to himself than to anyone else. "Exactly," Reis responded, his tone sharp. "The drones you're facing are their advanced scouts, and they're here for one reason: to eliminate humanity before we can become a threat to them. You've already made too much noise. The Galactic Alliance sees you as a dangerous, unpredictable species, but the Eternals, they want to erase you completely. Vale's grip tightened on the console. He could feel his pulse racing, but there was no room for panic. Not now. The situation was dire, but hearing the name of humanity's oldest enemy stirred something inside him. Defiance. He wasn't about to let his people be wiped out by anyone. Not again. We don't have time to waste, Vale said, his voice hardening. How do we fight them? We're outmatched. The Harbinger can't take on that warship and those drones. Race's voice softened, but there was no comfort in it. You're right. You're outgunned, but you're not alone. I'm sending you the coordinates for a hidden human stronghold, one of the last ones. We've been building it for years, in secret. It's a place to regroup, to plan. The mention of the hidden stronghold piqued Vale's interest. If Reese was telling the truth, this could be humanity's last hope, a place where they could prepare to strike back. But there were too many uncertainties. Who was Reese, really? And why hadn't they heard from the Manticore before now? I'm sending you the data, Reese continued, urgency creeping into his voice. It's not far from your current position, but you need to move fast. The Eternals won't give you much time to catch your breath. And one more thing, don't trust the Alliance. They might pretend to help, but they have their own plans for us. If you want to survive, you need to act on your own. The transmission ended abruptly, leaving Vale to digest the weight of Reese's words. Lieutenant Moan, Vale ordered, his voice hard, plot a course for those coordinates. We're moving out, but stay sharp. Those drones won't give us a free ride. As the ship shifted course, moving toward the location Reese had sent, Vale stood in front of the viewport, staring into the darkness. His heart pounded in his chest, but beneath that, a fire was igniting. The Eternals were coming. The Alliance had already shown their hand. But humanity would rise to meet them. Cliffhanger. Suddenly, a flashing red alert lit up the bridge. Captain, incoming message. It's from Earth. Moan's voice was tight, urgent. It's a direct transmission from President Tenor. Vale's heart sank. The timing could not have been worse. With the Eternals closing in, the last thing they needed was a distraction from Earth's leadership. Patch it through, Vale said, his voice heavy with concern. The screen blinked to life, revealing the stern face of President Alyssa Tenor, her expression as grave as ever. Captain Vale, you're heading straight into a trap. President Alyssa Tenor's face appeared on the screen, her expression one of tight control. Even through the distance, Vale could sense the weight of her words. This wasn't just a routine message, it was a warning. Captain Vale, Tenor said, her voice cutting through the tension on the bridge. You're heading straight into a trap. Vale felt the hairs on the back of his neck rise. His grip tightened on the console. A trap? From who? The president's eyes flickered, a slight shift in her demeanor that spoke volumes. From both the Galactic Alliance and the Eternals. You've fallen for their game, Captain. Vale's mind raced. But Reese. No, Tenor interjected sharply. Reese is not what he appears to be. The Manticore has been operating under the guise of a survivor, but I've had intelligence suggesting that the ship and its crew have been compromised by the Eternals. They'd been planted here to mislead us. The words hit Vale like a punch to the gut. If Tenor was right, then the man who had just warned him about the Eternals might have been working for them all along. He felt his pulse quicken as doubt began to seep in. You're saying we can't trust anyone. Vale's voice was low, barely controlled. The Alliance wants you to think they're protecting humanity, but they've made a deal with the Eternals. Tenor continued, her tone grim. They'll use your fleet as bait, lure the Eternals into a confrontation. And then, she let the sentence trail off, unfinished, but the implication hung heavy in the air. Humanity would be sacrificed. Vale's hands clenched into fists. Betrayal. The very thing they had fought to avoid was now staring them in the face. Humanity had always prided itself on its independence, its refusal to bow down to any alien empire. Yet now, it seemed the very people who should have been their allies were setting them up for destruction. He turned toward Moan, who was silent but watching him intently. Plot an emergency course. Divert from the stronghold coordinates. We're going to call Reese's bluff. But Captain, Moan said, her voice edged with disbelief, if we don't make it to the stronghold. Right now, we need answers. Vale interrupted, his voice firm. We need to know if Tenor's right. If we head straight into that stronghold, we're playing right into their hands. Moan hesitated, but her training kicked in. Aye, Captain. Diverting course. The Harbinger lurched into a sharp turn, its engines flaring as it veered away from the hidden stronghold's location. The asteroid field stretched out before them, a maze of rocks and debris that seemed to pulse with an unnatural rhythm. Vale's thoughts raced. If Tenor was right, the next few minutes could determine the fate of humanity. If the Manticore was compromised, and the Eternals had already infiltrated the highest levels of the Galactic Alliance, then there was no safe haven left. Aboard the Harbinger, silence settled like a heavy fog. The ship's crew worked swiftly but cautiously, their eyes flicking between sensors, weapon systems, and the course ahead. There was an unease in the air, a tension that wasn't just from the looming threat of the Eternals or the drones. It was the realization that their entire mission had been built on false assumptions. You really think Reese is working with the Eternals? Moan asked, her voice low as she glanced at Vale. I don't know, Vale admitted. But we need to find out before it's too late. If the Manticore is really compromised, then we need to deal with it ourselves. We're on our own now. Just as he finished speaking, the ship's sensors flared to life with a new reading. A signal, one that was unmistakably human. But it wasn't from Reese. It's from Earth, Moan said, her eyes wide with disbelief. A distress signal, from the heart of the Galactic Alliance. Vale's heart skipped a beat. Could it be possible? Earth itself was now under threat. Patch it through, he said, his voice steady, though his mind raced with new questions. The screen blinked to life, revealing a familiar face. General Dylan Jansen. Captain Vale, this is an emergency. The Alliance is moving against Earth. They've already begun targeting our key colonies, and it's just a matter of time before the attack reaches the core. We need your help. We need you to stop the invasion. Vale froze, the gravity of the situation settling in. Earth was no longer just a battleground. It was now the target. Cliffhanger. Before Vale could respond, the screen flashed with another urgent message, this time a coded transmission from an unknown source. Captain Vale, you are being watched. Trust no one. The Alliance and the Eternals are playing a far greater game than you realize. Time is running out. The transmission from General Jansen was cut abruptly, leaving an unsettling silence in its wake. The screen blinked out, and the only sound on the bridge was the hum of the Harbinger's engines, steady but faintly eerie. Vale's mind was spinning. Earth was under attack. But by whom? Was it the Eternals? The Alliance? Or was there something even darker at play? Captain, we're getting another signal. Lieutenant Moan's voice broke through the tension. She was staring at her console, her fingers dancing over the controls. It's coming from the Manticore. Vale's heart tightened. Reese. He had warned them about the Eternals, but if Jansen's distress call was real, and Tenor's warning about Reese was true, everything was falling apart. Everything was a lie. But the signal from Reese might hold the key to everything. Put it through, Vale ordered, his voice steady despite the maelstrom of thoughts in his mind. The screen flickered to life, showing Captain Reese's grim face. He didn't look surprised. In fact, he seemed to have anticipated this. Captain Vale, Reese said, his voice low, almost resigned. I told you that you couldn't trust the Alliance. Now, I'll tell you something else. We're running out of time. The Eternals won't stop at the colonies. They're coming for Earth. They're coming for all of us. Vale's fists clenched, but he held his ground. Why should I believe you now, Rhys? Tenor just warned me that you've been compromised, that you're working with them, that the Manticore is a trap. Rhys's expression hardened, and he leaned in closer to the camera. She's lying to you. She's been lying from the start. Earth's leadership has been secretly negotiating with the Eternals for years. They've already made their deal. They're selling us out, Captain. We can't trust them. The words hit Vale like a thunderclap. He had thought the Alliance was humanity's protector, but Rhys's words rang with a truth he couldn't ignore. The idea of betrayal by Earth's leaders. It was too much to process. So what do you want me to do? Vale's voice was taut with tension. You've been running in the shadows all this time, so how am I supposed to trust you? What's the real plan? Rhys took a deep breath. I don't have the answers, Vale. But I have one piece of intel that will change everything. The Eternals have already infiltrated the highest levels of the Galactic Alliance. They've been working from within to weaken us, to divide us, and now they're ready to strike. But there's something we can do. A weapon. An ancient technology from a lost civilization. I don't know where it is yet, but if we can find it, we can fight back. Vale's mind raced. A weapon. Ancient technology. It sounded like a last-ditch effort, a desperate plan to turn the tide. But it was a chance, and after everything that had happened, after all the lies and manipulations, he realized he didn't have many choices left. How do we find it? Vale demanded. Rhys leaned back, his gaze intense. That's the problem. The information is scattered, and the Eternals have been trying to keep it hidden. But the Manticore, we've uncovered a piece of the puzzle. We know the weapon's location, but we're not the only ones searching for it, and we can't do it alone. Vale's eyes narrowed. Who else is after it? Rhys hesitated, then spoke in a low voice. The Alliance has agents looking for it too. They'll get to it before we do, if we don't act fast. The tension on the bridge was unbearable. The walls felt like they were closing in. The Harbinger was alone in hostile space, caught between a galaxy-spanning war and an enemy whose motives were still unclear. Fine, Vale said, determination hardening his voice. We'll go after the weapon. But I need more answers. Rhys, what's really going on here? What's the endgame? Rhys's face darkened. That's what I'm trying to find out, Vale. The problem is, the closer we get to the truth, the more we realize we don't know who the real enemy is anymore. Earth, the Alliance, the Eternals, they're all playing a game, and we're the pieces. We're going to have to trust each other if we're going to survive this. Vale stared at Rhys, feeling the weight of his words settle in his chest. Trust. In this galaxy, trust was a fragile thing, and in that moment, Vale realized just how far humanity had fallen. No one could be trusted, not the Alliance, not Rhys, and not even Earth. But there was one thing he knew. Humanity would fight. Captain, Moan's voice cut through the silence. We've got incoming drones. They found us. Vale took a deep breath and looked at his crew. They were in this together now, whether they wanted to be or not. Cliffhanger. Before Vale could issue orders, the ship's sensors went into overdrive. A fleet of ships, huge ships, appeared on the radar, far larger than the drones, and they were coming in fast. Who the hell are these? Moan asked, voice shaking with disbelief. Vale's heart dropped. There was only one possibility. The Eternals were here. The sensors blared to life with a shrill warning. Vale's eyes flicked to the radar display, and his stomach tightened. The shapes on the screen were unmistakable. Huge, dark ships. Their silhouettes were monstrous, their design sleek but alien, and they were moving quickly, converging on their position. The Eternals, Moan whispered, her voice a mix of awe and terror. They're here. Vale's pulse quickened, but his face remained calm. They had expected this, though not so soon. The drones had been the initial wave, but now the true force of the Eternals was descending upon them. This was the real threat. Red alert. Vale barked. Prepare for evasive maneuvers, Lieutenant Moan. Hassan, get those shields up. Full power. The bridge crew scrambled into action, their training kicking in with robotic precision. But Vale knew, deep down, that it might not be enough. They were outgunned, outnumbered, and surrounded by forces far superior to their own. The Harbinger was a lone ship in the middle of a war that humanity wasn't ready for. They're locking onto us, Moan reported, her voice tense. They're targeting our engines. Vale's gaze shot to the viewport, the shadow of the incoming fleet now blocking out the stars. There were at least 5 ships, each massive and dark, their hulls shimmering with an otherworldly energy. Their weapons glowed ominously, and Vale could feel the weight of their approach in his bones. Full speed ahead, Vale ordered. We need to get out of their firing range. We can't let them hit us first. The Harbinger lurched forward, engines straining as it pushed through the asteroid field at breakneck speed. Vale could hear the roar of the thrusters as the ship shot between the rocks, weaving through the dense field with all the agility it could muster. The distant flash of weapons fire from the Eternals' fleet lit up the darkness, and explosions from the impact echoed in the distance. The Harbinger was dodging, but the drones were closing in fast. It was only a matter of time before they'd be trapped. We can't outrun them forever, Captain, Moan said, her voice tight. They'll catch us, and when they do, we'll be sitting ducks. Vale clenched his jaw, his mind spinning with options. The Manticore had given them the coordinates to an ancient weapon, but even if they found it, would it be enough to stop the Eternals? The weapon, whatever it was, could be their only chance, but it was a risk. If it didn't work, they would be wiped out before they had a chance to regroup. We have no choice, Vale said, determination settling over him. Plot a course for the weapon's location. If we can't fight them off, we'll have to make a stand. Moan hesitated, but only for a moment. She nodded and began punching in the new coordinates. Aye, Captain. Plotting course now. Hassan, Vale shouted. Prepare the weapons. We're going to need every ounce of firepower we've got. I've got the weapons online, Hassan responded, his voice laced with desperation. But they won't hold long against their fleet. Do what you can, Vale said, swallowing his fear. Give us an opening. The Harbinger veered sharply, moving at full throttle toward the coordinates Reese had provided. Behind them, the Eternals' fleet advanced, closing the distance with terrifying speed. Vale could feel the ship vibrating under the strain of their evasive maneuvers, the shields flickering as they absorbed incoming fire. They're about to fire again, Moan warned, her eyes locked on the tactical display. Brace for impact. Suddenly, a massive energy beam shot from one of the Eternal ships, streaking toward them like a comet. Vale's heart skipped a beat, but there was no time to dodge. The beam slammed into the Harbinger's shields, causing the entire ship to shudder violently. Lights flickered, and the hum of the engines faltered for a moment. The shields were holding, but barely. We've lost auxiliary power, Hassan shouted from the engine console. Hull integrity at 60%. Vale's eyes narrowed. They were running out of time. But ahead, through the chaos of explosions and flashing lights, he saw a break in the asteroid field, a narrow passage leading deeper into the unknown. There, Moan, get us through that gap. The Harbinger banked sharply, dodging the incoming fire as it hurtled toward the narrow passage. The Eternals' fleet hesitated, clearly not willing to follow them into the asteroid maze. But as they closed in, a new, ominous presence made itself known. The Harbinger's sensors picked up a signal, a familiar, chilling one. It was another human ship, but this time, there was no hope in it. A single line of text blinked onto the screen. We were wrong. The weapon is a trap. Leave now. The Eternals are already here. The message was from President Tenor.